Recently, the United States Preventive Services Task Force changed the recommendation for the starting age for women to begin mammography screening for breast cancer. So it used to be the recommendation was to start at age 50. Now the recommendation is to start at age 40. And a lot of us were surprised when the task force made this recommendation. We wondered, what was the reason? Is there evidence that breast cancer mortality is increasing in women in their 40s? Is there any evidence that screening mammography has become more effective for these women? We also wondered, one of the task force's arguments was that doing this change would also address racial disparities in the United States, because unfortunately it's known that black women have higher breast cancer mortality. So the thing was, as we looked at each of these questions, the answer was no for each of them. And so we wrote this piece in the New England Journal expressing our concerns and trying to push back against this recommendation, which we don't think was justified. So the first thing was, is there any evidence that breast cancer mortality is going up in this population? In fact, quite the opposite. Breast cancer mortality has gone down dramatically in women in their 40s, actually women in their 50s and above as well. But the drop has been even higher, the highest in women in their 40s. And if you look across countries with varying screening strategies, you see that the drop is the same. So it's really hard to say that the lowering in mortality has anything to do with screening. So in the United States, where there's lots of screening in women in their 40s, compared to, let's say, Switzerland, where there's almost none, the drop in mortality is almost the same. So that was one argument that we thought was not correct. Then the second question was, is there any evidence that screening mammography is becoming better at protecting women in this age group? Is there any evidence? And there isn't any new evidence. The trials that have been done, there are no new randomized trials. And the ones that have included women in their 40s, the effect of mammography, looking at a meta-analysis that my colleague Karsten Jorgensen and others did, shows that there is really no effect on breast cancer mortality in this age group. And then finally, the question about racial disparities and whether this change would improve them. We think actually the opposite would happen. And the reason is, in the United States, about 60% of women in their 40s get screened for breast cancer, whether they're black or white. So there's no disparity in screening. The disparity is in outcomes. So it can't be because of a difference in screening, since the rates are the same. It has to be due to other things. What are the things? Well, unfortunately, there's lots of evidence showing that the other things are things like limited access to the best available treatment or timely treatment, adjuvant therapy, the best new tailored treatment options. So that's the problem. And the problem is, by expanding screening, what we're doing is we're going to be diverting resources to screening, which won't help, and away from things that will help. I mean, the investment in screening should be used to improve access to the best available care. The only thing that the task force had that was new was a new model. And the new model had a lot of assumptions in it which we don't think are justified. They assumed, among other things, a 25% relative risk reduction in breast cancer mortality with screening, which is far higher than what's seen in any of the trials, and certainly in the meta-analysis. That said, in our table, we tried to give the best case scenario for mammography so that women could decide, knowing that the benefit of mammography was probably less. And in this case, the difference over 10 years in chance of death with mammography goes from about 3 per thousand to about 2 per thousand. So, you might argue that that's a big number, small number, but this way, by providing women with the number, they can make an informed decision. The table also highlights the downsides to mammography, because there's always downsides to interventions and treatments. In this case, false alarms are one of the most prominent ones. About a third of women who undergo mammography every other year over a period of 10 years, about a third of them will end up having at least one false alarm. About 7% of them will have a false alarm requiring a biopsy. Now that's important because it's a very difficult and anxiety-provoking situation. We did a study, a survey of American women a number of years ago, asking them what it was. These are women who had had a false alarm requiring a biopsy, and we asked them what it was like. And most of these women said it was among the most scariest things that had ever happened to them that period of time until they got the negative biopsy. So it really is an important thing. And then the last issue is about overdiagnosis. That's the diagnosis of cancers or what look like cancer under the microscope, but that were never destined to harm people even if they were undiscovered and untreated. The estimates for overdiagnosis range really broadly, but the task force used numbers which were very conservative. We think they underestimated it, but even so, their estimate is about 2 per 1,000 women as well. So it's higher than the estimate for the benefit of mammography.